Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage a representative from Ocean Aero.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody to this very packed session this morning. I certainly appreciate all of your interest in all things AI and all things autonomy. This morning I'm going to be explaining to you Ocean Aero. I've been here for about 4.5 years. I'm Kevin Decker. I lead the business. It is partially owned by Lockheed Martin, a bunch of venture capitalists that are running around this expo today. And what we build is the world's only autonomous system that is a sailboat and that also transforms into a submarine. So if any of you are old enough to remember the 1980s, we are literally a transformer robot that approximates artificial intelligence as it goes about its mission. So I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes or so just kind of explaining that to you, show you a couple videos and the thing in action. Then if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, we'll get out of your hair. On the upper left of the screen, that is the Triton AUSV. We call it the Triton. We make the singular product. Again, being the world's only vehicle that does this. It's taken us what is tantamount to about $100 million in 5 or 6 years to actually build this device. It is currently in use across the world. The biggest customer is the United States Navy, although we are a dual-use technology able to be used in offshore bathymetry for telecom, offshore energy, wind, and oil and gas. We are headquartered in the facility in the upper right, which we opened in October of 2023. It is in Gulfport, Mississippi. It's 63,000 square feet of steel and glass, and it looks like the Starship Enterprise when you walk in, so that we can build these in a quick fashion if we ever had to scale. Today, we're only building 1.5 to 2 a month. The capacity of this building is about 10 a month, and we have liens on the buildings behind it. In the event that we had to ramp quickly, we can obviously do that. Supply chain takes about 5 months to ramp up. Hiring practice in that part of the world is about 2 months, scaling up with training about another month after that. So we can ramp very quickly out of this singular facility. Supply chain is 99% American, 1% NATO, and like 0.01% in Mexico. So we believe we have a pretty tight handle on it. If you're me, you've lived through hyperinflation, Silicon Valley Bank, you've lived through parts of COVID-19, you've lived through a couple different conflicts around the world, and so we are very careful to be insular in our supply chain and protectionistic about that supply chain. We hold reserves of our inventory in the event of a chip shortage. Obviously, you can't build robots without chips, so we're obviously very careful about that. Before I go any further, I'll play this quick video. You can see some of the shots of this thing swimming around, doing pirouettes, that kind of thing. Okay, perfect. So there you can kind of see the Triton in action. Again, a dual modality vehicle. It sails, it dives. It then is a truck by which you put payloads on. In the industry, they call that modular payload delivery. Everybody does that. If not, you're kind of crazy from a capital efficiency standpoint. And those acronyms, if you don't know them, ISR, MCM, ASW, are the kind of the primary applications that a defense team would use an application for an autonomous system. So intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance is ISR, mine countermeasures, MCM, ASW, anti-submarine warfare. There are other applications, and I'll show you a little bit about that here in the coming pages around electronic warfare and loitering munitions and payloads and lacing of targets. And beyond all of that, obviously there are payloads for the majority of the oil and gas industry, subsea infrastructure evaluation as well. But for now, the high-level stats for the Triton is simply that it is a fuelless vehicle. It runs only off of solar power. The newest generations have over 1,000 watts of solar power capacity to charge what it will eventually become 36 kilowatts of battery power. That's an enormous amount of power for a vehicle of its size. It is only a slow-moving object, though. This thing is only going at 5 knots on the surface, 2.5 knots on the underwater components of this, depending on the tides, depending on the currents, depending on the waves and the winds and everything else that's out there. But this is a long-dwell, slow-moving vehicle, as opposed to fast-speed interdictors, which a lot of us have seen on the news in the Black Sea lately, intercepting from Ukraine into Russia. Those are fast-speed moving. Those things are moving at 75 miles an hour versus these longer-dwell, longer-duration, quiet, stealthy vehicles that are used for a different set of applications. We always talk about dual modality as our single value proposition differentiator, but there are others. Many surface vehicles that are autonomous measure their station keeping by multiple miles on the surface of the ocean. And that's okay when you're doing broad ISR, when you're doing environmental types of studies, but when you are in a conflict situation and you are on the border of Iran or Russia or China, you have to be very careful not to cross the line of scrimmage. And to do that, you have to have control. And our vehicles can stay out there in the water at sea state 4 with winds, with tides, with rain, with all kinds of things for 30 or more days at a time. Off our coast in Mississippi, we have a number of Tritons constantly on patrol. We always laugh. It's the most safeguarded port in the world because we've got these robots running around constantly out there. And you saw the video. Launch recovery is very fast. Mobility is very fast. The ability for us to move around the world on a C-130 with minutes of prep time versus hours of disassembly and assembly make rapid deployment very important. And in a few pages, I think you're going to see a shot of a helicopter deploying a Triton off of military base Camp Atterbury, Indiana. And so rapid mobility, the notional concept of getting to a zone as fast as possible when a need arises is tantamount to success. This is just a list, and we already talked about the defense applications in the science and research area. You can do a lot of bathymetry on coral. You can do mammal studies, fish studies, wildlife studies of every kind using hydrophones, different types of side scan sonars or array of different oxygenation sensors. You're using CTZs, ADCPs, LMNOPs. You're using all the different things to go study wildlife. And then on the far right hand of the screen, you can see the primary applications of oil and gas, chiefly of which is pipeline inspection. So there are places in the world that pump a whole lot of hydrocarbons offshore, and those things have to come onshore eventually. And what you don't want is espionage or a kinetic device attached to these things that would put a real dent in your summer travel gas prices very quickly. And so the surveillance of that around the world, whether you're in the Black Sea or off the eastern coast of the United Arab Emirates or here in the Gulf of America, Southeast Asia, north coast of South America, these pipelines require surveillance of all types, and that's something that our Tritons provide as well. Just a quick view on the economics of all this, lest anybody in this room not believe that the age of robots is just cheaper, faster, better, smarter than our legacy ways of doing things. This is a quick comparison of what we call Avenger-class mine countermeasure ships. These are British and American that are now being sundowned, okay? But before they were sundowned, you can kind of see the stats on the left and the right. And the bottom line here is that for a tenth of the operating cost, for 1/3 of the capital expenditure, you can cover 8 times the geography at a utilization of your asset rate that is significantly higher, 25% versus 90% of the autonomous system. There's just no other way to slice this. Fuel, food, insurance, alone from an economic standpoint, it's just going to see the rise of autonomous systems in the ocean beginning now and lasting pretty much indefinitely. I always say that we're about 20 years as an industry behind the aerial drone construct of the United States, NATO, and our allies. And so I think what you're seeing now is an uptick of investment, both CapEx and OpEx, that reflects that same type of spend that the United States experienced about 20 years ago. Again, this is our facility. We did open this to a decent amount of fanfare about a year and a half ago. We were Pleased to host a number of different officials from the Pentagon as well as our congressional delegation from Mississippi. And again, this is very important because I think in the news a lot you hear the notional concept that America's industrial base is just not ready to execute. We're just not ready to scale the way Ukraine is. Well, newsflash, Ukraine built 1 million drones last year. They're building 5 million this year. And if we ever came a percentage fraction of that, I think it would tax a lot of the industrial manufacturing base here in the United States. And so we leaned forward and we built this thing. And this thing is ready for scale. And again, as I mentioned to you a few minutes ago, we already have the plannings of the lines and the CapEx and the different cycles of those manufacturing lines to be able to ramp up very quickly in the need of an event. Now I'm going to show you a video just quickly about a few missions that we went on in 2024. The reason why I picked these is because it'll highlight some of those applications that we just talked about. You'll see some of the MCM, you'll see some ISR, you'll see some EW, you'll see us launching a few aerial assets from the back of a Triton. And when you kind of put them all together, I think we have a good appreciation of all the different types of applications a Triton can go do. You're meant to be hearing really dramatic music in the background, so just imagine yourself more impressed, okay? You know, just imagine it being much cooler than it actually was. If you haven't had a chance to see a Triton, we have one back over there somewhere. I don't know what booth number it is, but you can't miss it. You go down here, turn to left, and the guys will tell you all about it. There's some literature you can take with you if you want. It's actually a model, but it is a life-size exact replica model, so you'll be able to see all the different solar panels, different payload attachment points, and the communications network that's on the back of the Triton. We always do brag that the Triton has the most advanced communication set anywhere that we can find in the world. It's got 5 different layers of communication, a differential GPS, it's got cellular, it's got a mesh radio network on board, Iridium satellite, and we've also figured out how to marinize and miniaturize low Earth orbit satellites networks so that you can actually dive down to at least 100 feet or so, have it come back, and the phased arrays will still work adequately on the surface, which I don't know if any of you have ever played with a low Earth orbit device before, but you can't really get them that wet. You take them down under the water and they don't work anymore. So that type of sophistication integrated into the Triton gives us a competitive advantage against our adversaries when we go up in the middle of nowhere and you want to phone home. Just quickly, I'll tell you just 1 or 2 pages on each of the applications that we do. Again, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, ISR. The whole notional concept here is a picket line. Okay, so look, I get the rhetoric that people have out there in the world that says, oh, our systems ought to be able to go out there and last 6 months and back. Hey, well, listen, I wander around that big 5-sided building a lot, and I got to tell you, there's virtually no con-op in this world that tells you that you got to be out there for 6 months in the middle of nowhere. It doesn't really work that way. What does work this way is a picket line, where you're stopping things from getting into your port, into your base, into your whatever, your weapons engagement zone. And so by putting marinized radars, hydrophones, cameras, EW receptors, you're able to create a radius by which nothing gets in there without you knowing it, which is, of course, the name of the game. Similarly, in ASW, or anti-submarine warfare, submarines move through the ocean in what we call choke points. Okay, the ocean is not flat, it goes like this. And what you don't want is to run into something if you're a $6 billion submarine. And so what you end up doing is finding choke points that you kind of sneak in through. Luckily for us, we know where they're at. All we got to do is listen, and watch and wait until we have some intelligence that says, hey, adversary submarine is here. Now, the way this works today is that you will deploy sonar buoys from a helicopter, or you tow arrays, and you try to find signals or noise from these submarines. And then eventually, another helicopter comes and it soaks up all that information, it brings it back to base, your analysts take a look at that, and then you say, hey, a few days ago, there was a submarine headed this way here, okay? New plan. You send a robot, you put an AI-enhanced box on the bottom, it takes that signal intelligence, it transmits it to the surface, and we beam it back with that low Earth orbit satellite, and you get signal intelligence processed on the edge in like 3.5 seconds. Okay, so 3.5 days to 3.5 seconds. Now it's not, there was a sub going this way here a few days ago, there is a sub there right now. Okay, so just think about the implication of that. You know, how many drones would it take to blanket the Black Sea? I don't know, 3,000, okay? 3,000 drones sitting out there. You would never guess where a Russian sub was ever again. You would know. 3,000 subs at this price point is basically the equivalent of a single Columbia submarine. So look, I don't know what the answer is. Do you want a submarine, or do you want 3,000 drones to tell you where all their submarines? Like, I'm not the Pentagon, I'm not the military planner. I'm just saying that we now have the tools to be able to do that, and so that's worth consideration at some point, and this is how you would do it. This is another really cool one. So these Tritons work together using different gadgets that you put on them to find mines. So you use thermal sensors and cameras on the surface, you find things that don't look like they're the ocean, and you phone home. Likewise, using side-scan sonars, bathymetry units, underwater, you're finding attachment points of floating mines in the column, we call it the water column, inside the ocean. And then finally, really nefarious guys, they put their bombs underneath the bottom of the ocean. And that's a toughie, because you can't see them, but we have magnetometers that can go along the bottom of the ocean, find the metal, and then report back that there is a potential mine-like contact on the bottom of the ocean. When you put them all together, finding and fixing the target is phase one, and then phase two is doing something about it. So we have this, it's in development, we haven't demonstrated it just yet, but it'll work by the end of the year. We have these little miniature payload devices that can then drop off the back of the Triton. They are armed, and then with a push of a button, if you're the human operator, we send an acoustic signal that will then detonate the device and take out the mine. So you're finding, fixing, and finishing the mine all in a single detect to engage sortie mission, which, as far as we're concerned, has never been done before. So again, an entirely new concept of operations that the United States and our allies can deploy. This is some of the kind of beautiful bathymetry coming off of one of these. This was last year off the coast of, I think it was Alabama. In the upper left, you can see what it looks like using a bathymetry unit to look at a pipeline that's way down there. And that's what you get when you're on the surface today. So if you've all seen the headlines in the past year or so, there's companies everywhere doing types of bathymetry, looking at all types of underwater infrastructure, and that is the type of resolution you're going to get. Now, the bigger the ship, the more powerful the multi-beam, the better the imagery you're going to get. Of course, your cost escalates by an exponential level. Whereas if you can dive down from the surface, interrogate a target, and then start scanning, you can see resolution that is really quite stunning. In the bottom left, you can see that little yellow arrow pointing to something that's smooth. So that little matrix structure on the left are protective mattings put over the oil and gas pipelines on the bottom of the ocean. That little smooth area, somehow it's been worn away, whether it was just defective or something hit it, like an anchor or something like that, or whatever happened, is now gone, exposing a raw pipeline, which is kind of a no-no. You don't want metal that has a lot of hydrocarbons going through it to be exposed to the ocean. And so as much as you can from that near shore, you want that protected. So the company that hired us to do this was pretty pleased that we were able to find that. But just gives you a demonstration of just how high that resolution is that you would not be able to detect from the surface. This is some pretty cool stuff. As you saw in the video, you can see the aerial asset that was launched. We can put whatever you want onto that aerial asset. You can put cameras. You can put things that are not cameras. You can also do the really cool Jason Bourne stuff where you're lasing a target and something else fires something from a really far away, whether it's a plane or a ship. All these things, again, are done by humans today. Wouldn't that really be neat if we could send a robot versus our sons and daughters to the front line to go do all this? So again, another excellent use of safety for human beings over a piece of plastic and metal. And then, just to help you all lose sleep tonight, we've got gadgets in this world that can track everything on your phone no matter where you're at. Okay, so the notion of privacy, you should just forget about it. But these payloads can now track adversarial GPS signals, radio frequencies, all types of stuff. Half of them are sitting in this room that you will be able to kind of detect and then inform an operation before we get started. So all this type of stuff on the right-hand side under the banner of electronic warfare has been tried, vetted, and tested. This is not future tense. This is not present. This is past tense. Okay, this is stuff that we've already done all over the world. And then just to round us out here in the last page or two of the presentation, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. If not, I'll get out of your hair. Again, dual-use technologies. We do work around the world. Off the coast of Nigeria, we performed a piece of work for Total Energies, a French company. We're active in the Gulf of America, ExxonMobil and Hess, and there's a few others not on the page. Clean Gulf Associates is really cool. This is monitoring and detecting oil spills. So, whenever there's a crisis and there's oil all over the ocean, the whole idea is to use dispersants to suck up all that oil so we can clean it all up and scoop it all up. The idea, though, is we don't know if we got it all. So we got to make sure that we are monitoring that dispersant technology. And that's another application in the oil and gas space that our Tritons are used for. They are standing by and on retainer permanently out of the Gulf of America for deployment around the country whenever something like that happens. And so the list is large. We are a growing footprint. We got started in defense, and now we're pushing into offshore energy versus the other way around. But obviously the technology and its payloads was built for all of them simultaneously. So this is kind of the final slide. This is the last hero shot to the Triton. We are currently building Generation 3, Mark 16. At the end of this year, we will be releasing Generation 4, which is just slightly fatter, more power, bigger payload space, easier simplification. Again, over the past 4 or 5 years and a lot of different heartache, paying sweat, tears, and about $100 million of money, we are eventually able to produce something that is now highly utilized inside the defense space, and again, specifically the United States Navy and our partner allied nations around the world. So we consider this to be kind of a artificially intelligent, maybe not machine learning just yet, we're working on it, but reacting to its environment with stimuli, being able to adapt to different mission parameters as they change from our operators, what we consider to be one of the most advanced platforms for use today on the ocean. So thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate it. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. Any thoughts from anybody? I spent 16 years at GE. They always told me to wait 10 full seconds whenever you asked if there are any questions. If in case you're wondering, the average response time of an audience is 7.5 seconds. So you wait 10, you're in a good spot. Go on once, go on twice, up front.
Works against, my fault. Does your technology work against like any artificial intelligence?
Does it work with any other?
With artificial intelligence.
Yeah, so the Triton, and we home grew it, is armed with its own proprietary algorithms. So we don't, maybe we should, but we don't buy from other types of companies that do this. I'm sure we could learn from virtually every company here. But the way we grew up, we built it ourselves. And so his question was basically, what do you use to make this thing artificially intelligent? All those sets of algorithms from navigation, sucking in exterior information to computer vision is all homegrown at Aero, inclusive of what we call obstacle avoidance and threat evasion. So right now, if I'm moving towards you and I see you, the Triton will figure you out and it'll move around to keep from hitting you. But if you are trying to get me and you're a bad guy, and I can tell you're a bad guy because I can see you, the machine will perform what we call threat evasion. Put its wing sail down, it'll dive, perform an evasive maneuver, and get out of harm's way. So all of that is homegrown. Any other thoughts, questions? Going once, going twice. Sold to Olivia in the middle. Okay, thank you, everybody. I appreciate the time.